begin with the roll call. Scott Self, here. Michael York.
Yeah.
Jane Johnson.
Here.
Michael Day. Brandon Self.
Here.
Richard Lane.
Here.
Victoria
Which one do you
Haynes.
want to go to? This one? Okay.
Sly Karazinski.
Here.
And Steve Malone. Here. And Brian Brody. Okay, I will seat, I think it's for last time, I will seat Steve for Michael Day.
Wait.
Yes.
I should have deleted that off there.
What's that?
Michael Bay is not on here anymore.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Sorry.
He didn't, yeah, okay.
Sorry about that.
And if you're not seated for Michael Day, still do, but he's not participating in the meeting, so get that over there.
So I'm missing.
Nobody's seated, yeah, you're here, nobody's seated. Okay, the agenda, review and approval of the minutes of March 9th, 2023 minutes, and election of officers. Number 6, regional impact vote, applications and public hearings, and that's planning board 23-010 with the site plan review. Fieldstone Land Consultants, PLLC, on behalf of Western Forces and Services, has submitted an application for a site plan review to construct a commercial landscaping facility and attached multifamily housing on undeveloped land located at the junction of West Swanzey Road and West Street. Subject property within tax map 73, lot 12-2 in the business district. And that has been postponed until our April 27th meeting. Next, under discussions and other business, preliminary conceptual consultation, Greg Johnson on the mixed restaurant property. That has been withdrawn by the applicant. Alternate member application, Michael, I don't know how to say his name, but Sugio.
Because they were
Oh, what is it?
It's Stungio.
Stungio?
Stungio.
Oh, Swanzey, okay. Thank you. Sorry. And the site plan review applications, plan rating workshop, and any other business as may be required. And, okay, so minutes of March 9th, 2023. Does anyone have any alterations or deletions or anything like that on that? I do. Nothing major. I just put it away, but. Just wanted to clarify, I was on page 4, and the first sentence says, Lane asked about the deed restriction on the airport property. We should specify that that is, I think, plain view, they call it, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Plain view, so we'll just specify plain view property so we know what we're talking about there. Anybody else have anything else on those minutes? If not, motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Victoria to approve as amended, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Richard Lane. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, none opposed. Now, election of officers. We have the chairman and vice chairman. And do we have any volunteers for that position?
I have a nomination,
Okay.
if you're ready.
No volunteers, I guess. Either position, vice chairman or chairman. And a nomination is in order.
You can't get off the hook. I nominate Scott Self as chair, and in the spirit of this round, you can't stop. We have this second generation thing going on that I think is kind of wonderful. And in that spirit, I'd like to nominate Richard Lane as vice chair, given the fact that his father served as a selectman for many years and as a planning board member for many years.
Yeah, you did.
He did.
So we have a recommendation of myself, Scott Self, as chair, and Richard Lane as vice chair. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Seconded by Sly Karazinski. Any discussion? I've never liked being chairman of this board, or any of the board really, because the only reason, I don't mind doing it, I'll do it, but the reason is that you can't fully participate in the meeting. You're too busy running the meeting. You can participate maybe 50%, 75% sometimes, but you can't give full concentration for the whole meeting. So that's why I kind of usually ask for volunteers if they want to take over, but we have we have voting on the floor there for nominations, so that being said, I have a further discussion.
Which makes you perfect for the job.
Thank you. Well, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so that's settled. Now, before we start the regular agenda, Mike Jasmine and Julie Peel.
My brother always told me, Scott, better be careful what you get good at, and even more careful what you choke at.
Let me write that down. You two have something for us before we get going tonight?
Yeah, I think I'll present the meat of it and you can chime in if you think I butchered it now. So if you remember, I came by and I presented Richardson Park to you guys. We do have a little bit of an amendment to it to some degree. Nothing major. First, probably the more difficult portion of this is that some of the comments from the abutters was that they had concerns with the light piercing up over the lake. Our goal is to use some of the funds in this project to amend those lights so that they do conform with our regulations and aim downwards. But on that same topic, though, we are also in the process of installing those lights on the side of this structure. Code enforcement had concerns that primarily on the architectural plans, they were depicted as proposals to include, but not presented as such. And thinks they should be there. And so the actual contractor said that they could do it, and they could do it for both pieces. It will be the same feature for the new, what is the existing structure and what is the proposed structure. It will be the same style, and downwards. There was a couple questions about motion sensor or not motion sensor. I still think we're going to go with the idea of it not being motion sensor, only because we're concerned with like the bar, people go by, and every time it's not, again, should be shining downward, but not shining outward. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. That's kind of the majority of the bulk, but just wanted to include the board on this topic, if they were concerned with pieces of that.
Those lights are on photocell?
Yes.
And not a timer, photos, not a timer, correct?
Yeah, not.
LED,
Yes. That's the intent of it.
so they can run all night, not bother.
What is photocell?
Well,
Pardon?
What is photocell?
Photocell is, it's like a on-off switch. And during daylight, it's off. And as soon as it gets dark enough, the switch closes
Yeah.
and turns the light on. And as soon as it's light enough, it opens and turns the light off.
you can't manually turn it on, correct? Is my understanding of that?
Not usually with a photocell, unless you have a switch above.
You can do it any way you want.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay.
You get a good thunderstorm or something like that, but it's very cloudy, will they come on?
Yeah, if it gets real dark, yes, it will.
It depends on the set.
Side of it.
You can set the sensitivity. Depends on the set. You get a lightning that will shut them off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it, just the lighting is the change?
That's all we're going for now?
And in the same place you said on the existing building that the original ones are on?
Yeah, so the current building, yeah, we should
Yeah.
take those off and replace them. We're gonna get a full quote on that soon from the guys that are doing the work currently, but.
Well, thank you for taking your time to present that to us.
What did you guys do about that?
Yeah.
Any people bring
Appreciate it.
questions?
Yeah, well, we blame it on you anyway, so.
That's true. Thanks.
Mr. Jeff, did you have anything? Or you're just backing him up in case we gave him a hard time? Okay. All right then. Let's get on with our agenda, which is regional impact vote. Actually, there's nothing on here. So no regional impact vote is required. So that brings us to alternate member. And Michael Scudero, right? I'm going to mess that up every single time.
It's Mike Scudero.
Scudero, okay. I'm going to write that down here for you.
Spell Michael S.
Okay, great. Anything to add, presentations or, I read what was written about you.
Not too much. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Construction Management and Architectural Engineering. I haven't really been working in the industry too much since I graduated several years ago. I actually am currently employed in the aerospace and defense industry as a systems engineer. So I've been primarily doing that for approximately the last 7 years. Other than that, kind of grew up around the industry, not necessarily in the industry, but around the industry. Originally from southeastern Massachusetts, moved to Swanzey back in December 2016, and I've been here since.
Great. And you're interested in being on the planning board?
I'm very interested in
Okay.
that work.
Good, good. So any questions from the board? If not, we need a motion to nominate Mr.
Scungio, so moved. I nominate.
I'll second.
Scungio.
I'll
To
second.
be an alternate to our board, and, okay, that motion was made by Victoria, seconded by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Glad to get sworn in.
Yes, please read
Yeah, I'll. And you can, town hall will do that, right? You know that. Town clerk will swear you.
Okay.
You didn't have one,
Oh.
right?
Hey, Scott, I don't
I
know,
know,
George Brackett is here for his,
I know.
George, are you here for your property?
No.
Oh, you're not?
Sean have anything on that line?
Sean?
Yeah.
Who is that?
I
Oh, nobody, there was a preliminary discussion, conceptual discussion with the planning board that was, by Greg Johnson, that was withdrawn.
Okay.
It was just on discussion.
I thought it might have been,
Okay.
but I was around, so
Well, wait. Let's see, we have, next on the agenda, site plan review regulations. We've been working on these for quite a while, and it's good to get them done and out of the way, so. More comments on that.
I've got one that I've already given to Sarah. It's on page 7. Number 3, that was actually a new law on that, they got rid of that.
Probably going by a different,
The board may apply to the selectmen for an extension not to exceed an additional 90 days before acting to approve conditional approval or disapproval on an application.
7.03,
Got the original one.
number 3.
is that you going on the original?
He's going on the
The
original.
real original one?
The
I have a
real
copy-
original.
Okay, I have a copy. of the real
Everybody's
original.
going off the original
Okay,
one.
Okay, so I've got,
7.03.
just not to confuse everyone, I've got a draft that, remember, we were working on it before. And we went through it and reorganized the whole thing, Sarah and I did, and we discussed it with the board stuff, and I've got the copy of that draft, so I was going on that, so that's why I'm on the wrong page. Let me get on the other page. And the other, just go through it. Okay.
No, it's,
Three.
it's this
Oh, yeah,
packet, yeah, this
7.03
one that we
now.
just got, like, I don't know, was it last
And what was the
meeting?
change on it?
That law's been removed.
Nope, you're on it right here.
Oh, zoning ordinance, yeah.
Oh,
This is it right here.
Okay.
It was something in this paragraph, I don't. Yeah, number 3, which part?
Do you want to go through this?
You gotta go forward, because that
Excuse me.
law is gone. I'll do that.
Scott, do we want to go through this chronology?
We should go page by page, I think, just to run through it, there isn't, we can't really, we shouldn't really jump around like that, so. Let's start from the beginning, we renumbered everything before now, in the old, just to refresh everyone's memory before we start going through it. In the old, like on page number 5, it started on 701, everything else was section Roman numerals and all that type of stuff. And then on page number 5, it started on 701, and it just, it was mix and match. So that renumbering is all done. So you don't have to do that. And you'll see in the draft that there are still less.
Oh, yeah, I have the copy of the draft. Is that, what would you prefer we work off of? The draft or what?
What
Does everything copy of the draft? Okay.
Well, is that one of the copies of the draft or is that the
This-
original?
This is what was given out a couple of meetings, 2 or 3 meetings ago.
Okay, I'll tell you which one it is. I can go to page, how's on page,
Page 5, you guys.
is it page 5? Okay, go to page 5 and see if it begins. Yeah, page 5. It doesn't begin with 701 on page 5 on your
Okay.
We use them both anyway. so now-
Yeah, 701.
Okay, so you have the through a little bit here. Okay, so starting right off, page 1. Anybody have anything? I have the cost part there on the old one. So page 2, what's the purpose, the authority, and the purpose?
Yes. Just thought that we revisit the master plan and the statement of principles to coincide with what our purpose is here. Compatibility to the surrounding neighborhood is a key item in the master plan. And, you know, if our job is to, part of our job is to look at a master plan and try and keep the town in that direction or whatever, you know, and yet we're not doing that, then we have a conflict. And I'm just wondering whether or not we need to change something to make it a little more compatible with our master plan, under the purpose.
Are you saying, are you adding in some wording there or something? Or?
Yeah, well, in the master plan, it speaks to our purpose being, and looking at things to be compatible with the neighborhood and existing surroundings. And going back to the Plainview, or however we want to look at it, up at the airport, that doesn't really fit into the master plan. I know it's allowed by zoning, et cetera. That's something that we maybe want to look at, you know, somehow amending that. But, you know, how do we justify, or how can we make things a little more compatible with our master plan and our purpose?
So, yeah, the one up by the airport, definitely we all know that it did not fit into that neighborhood. One of the reasons I didn't object more to that is because when the courts looked at that from the ZBA, it was first challenged from the ZBA, the courts looked at it and they looked at the entire business zone, not just that area up there. So that's how they saw it. Who knows if another court would see it that way, but they saw it with the entire business zone, that, oh yeah, that's compatible because down here we have them in this business zone, and, you know, the rest of the business zone in town, we have stuff like that, so that's how they thought it was compatible with it. So that's a problem. We don't know how the courts are ever gonna go.
No,
We do have, you know, about aesthetics and so on in our zone, our site plan review regulations.
true.
And we do try and stick to them, but that being decided previously by the court, we weren't gonna win that, in my opinion, anyway, in that regard.
There's something I still don't understand about the decision that the court made. I don't understand why I understand that it was a 2-2 decision, but the fifth justice had recused because she is an employee of the firm that represents Avenue Development. Now, it would seem to me that in my heart and soul, I feel that it was an error that they didn't have a substitute for her in a case like that, that meant enough to a community that they took it to the Supreme Court. And I don't know who to approach about that, and it's too late, I understand, to do anything about it now. But things like that happen. And in having a master plan, the reason you have it is to plan for the best and most appropriate future development of your community. And we all know that that really was not the best and most appropriate use of that small piece of land by the airport, business zone or not. There were other businesses that would have been much more appropriate in that place. And so I understand what Richard is saying, because that's what a master plan is for, is to help us plan for the best and most appropriate use of our land and for the future of our community. I mean, there was a nice big wide spot down by Gamarlos too, but was it the best use of it, right on a state highway, to put 82 apartments right there for the future of our community? I personally don't think so, but I mean, this is why we have a master plan. A master plan means that it's the master of
It sets
the planning.
the direction of the community
Yeah,
in oncoming years, but it's mainly used, supposedly anyway, it's mainly used by the planning board to enact zoning regulations. That's supposed to set the stage for the planning board coming up with however guidance to the town, how we want development to go into town, what's allowed here, what's allowed there, what isn't allowed, and so on and so forth. But the master plan, pretty much, the main purpose of it is for that, doing that, and which we do use for that setting that. Right.
but it says right here that it's a legal prerequisite for adoption of zoning ordinance,
It is.
adoption of a historic district, establishment of a capital improvement program, and adoption of growth management ordinance. And the reason for it is planning. It's to help us plan well. So maybe, I don't know, I won't have to hear it or see it, but in 20 years, we might hear people saying, what in the world were they thinking? Let that happen,
Well, again, those things have to be addressed in the zoning ordinance itself and not necessarily the site plan review regulations. Because for one thing, the zoning ordinances, any of the ordinances are passed by the town, all the people in the town. These regulations are just passed by this board. So you can't be too powerful with them. And we aren't supposed to be, and RC don't let it be too powerful with them. Guidance on it.
Could we work on the landscaping and screening portion of it, so that if something doesn't fit in, but is allowed by zoning through exception, it could be shielded from the surrounding neighborhood?
And we
With the
can,
idea that it
that's definitely one of the
goes
things that
toward
we do.
the fitting into the neighborhood.
But how would you shield a 43-foot tall building?
But that's just,
25-foot trees.
However-
Well, basically, you would need enough boundary.
what we tend to do is opt towards the minimum, right?
Right.
So if instead of only requiring the minimum that our site plan regs call for, if we said in this instance where we have a situation that requires a great deal more screening, then perhaps we need to sacrifice some of the building bulk and instead use that for green space. And I think where we really run into trouble, and I think we're going to continue to do this until we get brilliant about this, is the areas where we have residential abutting business districts, because in our zoning map tends to have, the business district running along our major arteries, but historically, that's where we've had houses, So this happens all over town, and it's really, you can't spot zone, right? But I think if there could be a way where we could be more thoughtful about trying to, and perhaps it is landscaping, perhaps that's the only tool we have, but trying to make the really divergent uses work better together, protect one use from the other use.
And again, we're talking about the two properties that we're talking about now are residential, actually, we aren't talking about actual business.
Yeah.
Residential uses.
Yeah, so it was a,
Multifamily, but.
Yeah.
we're talking
yeah,
about
it wasn't
people-
anticipated that it would be residential in the business
I
district.
don't see how we can control the density with landscape. Density is one thing, density.
Well, we could screen against the objective view of people going, that looks ugly. That's what we can do. You're right, density, you have to write your density requirements to what you believe should be the density of that lot. Which we have.
And which we did. Which we
Yeah,
we
plain
changed
view
it.
is no longer allowed on that.
Right, no, it would not be allowed now.
Right. But Flatley is tucked in the woods.
Right.
You
And
know,
there
I mean,
are-
If you have enough property to do that, you should do it. If you don't have enough property, you shouldn't build 3 or 4 stories.
No.
True. Well, also, it would help with the, which we don't like to use the word anymore, aesthetics, but it would have helped with the aesthetics had we put a buffer requirement on them. There are buffers in other places. We don't use them much here. And I think we need to start looking into them. And I'm not into protecting the developer if this is my community. And I don't care if it's Flatley or Avenue. If they come into Swanzey and they want to build something astronomically hideous on the roadway that I'm going to drive by all the time, I want them to do all they can to make it look as inconspicuous and less inoffensive as they possibly can. So if they have to spend $10,000 or $40,000 on buffer materials and plant the trees on top of them, I think they should. And I think that would have helped. If I were going to live in that building, I would not want to look out at the traffic flying by on Route 10 or people filling their gas tank at Gomorrah. So I think that it's up to us to ask for those things.
How can we create construct a zoning statement that will be compatible with what we're discussing this evening? Any ideas?
Don't we already have a
I
problem?
think you'd have to use height. That's about the only tool you have there.
Maybe like a ratio for the setback or the amount of buffer based on the height.
Could be that, or just a specific story height, 2 stories allowed in this part of town, 2 stories or 3 stories allowed in rural ag, that type of.
The height requirements in each zone.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Mhm.
So that's it, but, trying to put 45-foot trees in front of a
No, you can't.
building, you can't do that.
They might die before they reach
For
that.
argument's sake, you can have, okay, you've got to have a 10-foot setback, but for every additional story above 2, you need an additional so many feet of setback.
That's what I'm thinking.
Now, you look
Ratio.
at, you look at, where I am over in, the old Haley Park. There is a nice buffer zone between the buildings and Route 10. You don't have that in other places.
Only because those trees were there. I mean, yeah. if
Well, it
they
doesn't
were
matter
60 foot
whether they were
pines,
there or not, I'm glad they were there.
Yeah, but I'm saying
Well-
that's why you have that buffer there. The buffer is still the same distance.
Yeah, but for every so many feet of height, you can require so many feet of setback to bury the property, bury the building back into the property.
Yeah.
I don't think there would have been anywhere near the objection had that project at the airport been put up where Flatley's property is, where it's back off the highway and out of sight. The fact that it's
That's
right.
obvious, because he didn't get any complaints at all.
You're right. That's, it's, how do we, again, going back, how do we set up a zoning ordinance that will control that type of a project and not make it incompatible?
Again, if
The
it has
height.
to do with height.
Mhm.
If we can do that, I think that would solve a lot of problems.
You can
We
take,
could require different heights in different zones.
We could, and we have to think about it and make sure that it would pass muster, we'll say a challenge, and go back around like our attorney. Make sure that we aren't trying to eliminate,
Flood zone.
well, not spot zone, but eliminate certain types of housing.
I don't think that would be the purpose of,
Wouldn't be the purpose, it doesn't
or the
matter.
intent.
It doesn't
You
matter
would go
that either.
to business as well.
Yeah.
In certain zones.
Not too many 4-story businesses on there, any of them, 1 or 2 story.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you'd have quite the size company to come into them.
And even at that, most of them are not really visible from the highway. thinking of the industrial park area, especially
Well,
in,
even the ones on Route 12 are, they're based on a lower piece of land. They're not built right up even, the first floor is not even with the, you have to go down.
This circles back to what Jane was saying about the master plan too, because when those surveys were conducted, each time the master plan's been updated, people have always talked about how it's the rural character of Swansea that people really value, citizens value here. And I, it's not something that we can define what rural character means, but we all know it when we see it, and what we're going to see on, across from Wilson Pond is not what we consider to be rural character.
It's not just Swansea either, as it states in this NHOPD directory. It says for preserving and enhancing the unique quality of life and culture of New Hampshire. So we're going to be seeing that just fade away if we allow that to happen.
And in the meantime, they're shoving these housing units down our throat.
Right, but we don't have to swallow it.
Until the judge says, yeah, you do, like they did in the ZBA.
Well, according to the master plan, though, we've really met our obligation,
We can't use a master plan to fight something.
No, but we can feel good about the fact that we have actually, we have permitted more units than would be our fair share for a municipality. I mean, we've got the numbers to show that we have.
At least 408. And that's going to be 800 people.
Yeah, and there does becomes a question of what's our capacity,
Well, I've been yelled at before by people that I say, well, you have to look into if we have it in our site plan regulations, what effect does that have on all our services like fire and police and everything else?
Ratcheting up.
Sure, because you have to have so many police officers for your population, which is 2.1 to 1,000 you need for police officers. Well, we don't even have that right now. Plus, the fact is, it's hard to get police officers these days. And the fire, is the fire inadequate? Who knows? In your schools?
Yeah.
We're gonna build bigger schools now?
apparently so.
Sounds We're gonna build them 4 stories high.
But we can't really put this in the master plan, and I shouldn't even be saying it, but if we limit our extension of the sewer and water, then we limit that kind of development.
That's true, that's true too.
That's the bottom line.
And the West Swansea right now, West Swansea Water Company cannot provide the fire protection in most of these buildings. They have to do something.
No, but they'll still use the cistern as the sewer. I mean, if they can hook up to the sewer, then they're gonna be building it there.
Right.
They can get water enough, they don't care about the suppression as much as they do for the sewer part. So, we watched on how we're extending those systems in the future, and then we're watching how we're extending development. And right now, we are at capacity at that, in my opinion, we're at capacity at that plant down there, just because of design capacity is 160,000 gallons a day. We're running between 60,000 and 70,000 gallons a day down there. But when it was built, we didn't have restrictions or limitations on phosphorus. We do now, so that changes the volume quite a bit, the system down there. So we're keeping up with it, we're able to maintain it down there, but that should be looked into or considered with any other type of development, really what the real capacity is down there.
No, that new development, I forgot what the numbers were, it's gonna add for that.
Around 3,000 gallons a day. You're not even gonna see it that much, but still, I mean, it's adding something.
That one's 3, and then the next one is another 305.
It's the gallons per day is, like I said, what it's designed for, but it's the loading part of it, which is the nutrients, the food, and going into that lagoon system, and the ability of the bugs to take care of it before it goes out the other side into the river down there. And there's a new permit coming that the town is going to be, maybe 6 months from now, we're gonna be on that permit, at some point on that permit, and there are more provisions in that permit. They're gonna give us an aluminum number, which means the chemical we're using down there is polyaluminum chloride to settle out the phosphorus in there. Okay, so that adds aluminum to the water. So now they're putting a limit on aluminum that you can put out in the river. And it's like, I don't know, maybe 5 micrograms, that's 5 parts per billion. We would never make that at all. So we would have to change some kind of process down there, in treating the phosphorus just to meet that number and still meet our phosphorus number. And I think they're gonna have a number on iron as well down there. And the PFAS chemicals there that you ever hear everybody talking about, they're gonna give some sort of a limit on that, but they can't do it yet because they haven't located a lab that can actually test for those, and those are parts per billion as well. But they haven't located a lab that can test parts per billion. But anyways, that stuff's coming down the line for this plant down here. So it focuses back to what I said about extending the sewer line up there. Maybe if another one comes in, we'll say we can't do it because of the infrastructure down there. We gotta do something about the plant first. Back to the matter at hand.
It's good to know.
Yeah, as far as the master plan, relating back to the master plan, we can do that in there, but again, the site plan review regulations are pretty much following our zoning regulations, which follow the guidance of the master plan. So,
But how about what Steve was saying with the, I wonder if maybe Sarah knows some other towns that have something like a,
I think there is something in our zoning about that. I don't recall, but I remember when that place that Steve lived in was going up down there, that was the highest building around. And there was a problem because, things were so darn high. They were talking about that, but I don't know if it was in our zoning or not. I haven't seen it yet.
but I wonder if it's something we might be able to put in our site plan regs.
I would imagine it is until someone challenges that.
Yeah.
Anything we can put it,
Well, we do say that we want to minimize the disturbance of the natural
Yeah. That
lawn, so if they propose to go and cut all those pine trees and then build the 3 buildings, I think the planning board probably would have said no,
They probably would have, yeah. You can't do it. The setback thing that Steve was talking about forever is something, you can't control that because it's, puts it back in, and density or no density, if you can't keep that setback. But again, the density has been changed, so that is a huge problem. So, let's get to our site plan.
So I spent some time with the purpose section, because because it's first. And what I did is I broke it up. I turned that block of text into individual numbered points, okay, and kind of shuffled the language around and double checked it against what the state says that we shall and may include in our purpose section or in our regs. So I have that. I can give it to you.
It basically says the same thing as.
It's basically the same thing, but it's reorganized in a way that feels to me like it addresses what our more primary objectives are.
And then you see 19.
Yes.
we're working in the draft, and when we get the draft, we could
Yeah, let's do that.
address each one.
Yeah, then everyone can read it over. Okay, so that's the purpose section. Anybody have any more comments on the purpose section? If not, let's see, scope of review. I'm just thinking, we've reorganized this as well. It was out of order quite a bit from the original one that we have here and the draft one that we had been working on before. Some things are before other things in it, which makes more sense.
Do you want to just read through in your order and then everybody else shuffle?
That's a good idea.
So authority is still 1 and purpose is 2.
Yeah, second purpose is 2, that's right, that's section 1, and then scope of review. Anybody have anything on that? I had some things. Mine was item B and but it had to do with it's just a redundancy in the ordinance. It says, the land use office is directed not to accept a site plan review application that does not include written permission from the owner of the property. And then under section 5, general, number 5 on that, it might not be number 5 on yours, but I'm just reading off this one. It says it's about the same thing. It says the applicant for the site plan review must either own the property in question or must furnish written permission from the owner. The land use office is directed not to accept the site plan review application that does not include written permission from the owner of the property. I'm just suggesting we get rid of one of those. And I would say
Does it say the same thing?
exactly the same thing, it's redundant. But under scope of review, I think we ought to just get rid of that right there. We'll leave it under the general part. So, under scope of review, does anyone have anything written in there or side notes or anything? Okay, if not, so we are going to, mine goes to general. So what we have there, we've got exempt site developments.
Should the 100 and 200, should the 100 and 200 be for the ratio of the total current building or parking area?
This is for an exemption, right? Let's see.
Right.
An expansion of 200 square feet greater than parking area. That's one parking space, is what that is. Let's see. So they could put in one parking space without having to come before the board. 100 square foot or greater to a building that hasn't come to the board as well.
So the difference between like Market Basket and Dollar General, should one parking space be allowed for Dollar General, but only one for Market, you know? The Market Basket put in 4,
Here.
or 4 times the size.
So that's what you meant by proportion.
Like a proportional ratio.
Yeah.
Or is it open if we can't want to, don't want to?
It might be. We've had that in there for a long time.
It might be a reason why you'd want to restrict one over the other because of the topography of the land. Some places you would say, no, we don't want you expanding at all. Because, you know, you get into the aquafilter and get all these other problems.
Yeah, so maybe go to the way it is, the 100 square foot or greater to a building and 200 square feet or greater to a parking area. And again, we're talking about businesses, and we're talking about someone's house, single family or 2-family homes. We're talking about 3-family or larger businesses.
So no change in that area.
I don't think so. Any change in that area? Anybody with that? Okay, anybody else have anything else on, let's see, maybe the next one under that is general. Mine is different.
Under permission to visit the property, under general, where we have the right to go in and inspect, should we have some sort of identification that we can show the owner, or is it because they don't know us?
No, they don't, and it should be put in there that we have to request permission to the property owner, because you shouldn't be able to just, whether we're planning board or not, just walk on the guy's property and say, well, I'm here to look around, you know. You should have to call ahead a day or two and say, we're coming over, or I'm coming over, or whoever it
Or
is.
even the staff should.
Yeah, so we should have some wording in there, we can come up with something that says that with permission from the property owner, planning board member can come over and if you want to come over, but if it's more than 4 at the quorum of the meeting, so.
Yeah. But again, should we have some sort of identification to give to the landowner or to show the landowner?
If the owner is notified that Scott Self is coming to his property, I suppose you could just show your license.
Even if it's a business card type thing, it's your license.
Yeah, there we are, but if they know who's coming, yeah, but
Yeah.
Richard's right. How do they know who the planning board members are? No, I don't know. So, should be identified for sure, whether through a license or town identification, I don't know.
Did you want that to be added as well? Something about, you know, a member needs to identify themselves for a site visit? Or?
No, let's not put that in there. You know, we don't want to paint ourselves in this corner if we want. But, yeah, we should do that, I think, if we're gonna do that. The property owner should be notified. If they're notified, they know we're coming anyway on that time and on that day, so.
Years ago, we used to know everybody, you know?
Yeah.
But that's good.
Yeah. Here, I'm not sure we're on yours, but there's just a note in the plan that says neither preliminary conceptual consultation nor design review are required. This is just a note. I'm pointing out those, and then pre-application review shall be separate and apart from formal consideration of a site plan review application. And the time limits for acting upon a formal application do not apply. I think we should just add until a completed application is accepted by the board.
Okay, going along in that line of thought, can we put in our review regulations that on what we would define as complex project, i.e. this one by Nix or the one where they're going to put in the storage for soil and et cetera, that we have a conceptual review of it before we even act on an application. My thought process is let's look at something, give ourselves time to review it thoroughly before we start the clock.
So it's my understanding that we can't require that conceptual view. If we can strongly recommend it in the site plan regs, but we can't require it.
Under why?
Because the RSAs don't allow us to do that, and we can't require a design review either. We can require a site plan. They give us, in the regs, they give us the authority to require site plan review and to review site plans. So if they don't give us the authority to make them come in conceptual or even the design, that I understand it, unless I'm understanding it properly. I think that's the case. But we still, I think we have it in our site plan review regulations that we do recommend it. And I'm going to just take a look and see what happens from here. Actually, I was skipping around mine to that because it's in order of how we do things. The reorganization of this is in order as to how the board actually does it, right from the conceptual all the way on up through. And the original one here is way out of order. Around all over the place and trying to figure out what's going on. But we'll look into that to find out if the RFA gives us the authority.
Yeah, because it says pre-application phases, and again, just trying to buy us more time before we start the clock and then get ourselves into a box that we can't get out of.
I did have, under submission requirements, that was the old section 10. The old section 12, submission requirements. We've got the owner's name. Under just on number 2, which is the north arrow, scale of 50 feet equals 1 inch, and the name and address of the person who is the flat. 40 feet per square inch is pretty much the standard on most of these civil engineering. So I think we ought to change that 50 feet to 40 foot per inch. So maybe changing that.
We should change our checklist then too, because you say at 1 inch equals 30 feet.
Yeah, we should change that, right? Well, the 30 feet per square we have there, right?
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah, so it should be changed to 40 feet. I think that's pretty much the standard for any of those projects there. 40 feet per inch. Still in that, underneath that category there. I know. underneath other, that's on page 20. And it says the application shall be accompanied by any necessary federal, state, or local permits and approvals. But we should change that to should, because the board cannot deny acceptance of an application just because the applicant doesn't have the approval of whatever, some permit or something like that, or even the zoning board approvals. We can take it and add that as a condition, but we can't not accept the application just because of something like that. So we encourage them to do that, and they should get all that stuff done, but instead of shall, I think the board should, and someone else.
Before you go further on that, going back to 11,
Page 11?
no, section 11, under the 4-year exemption.
Yeah, that's 5 years now. I think we need to, oh, is that what you were gonna say?
No, I just,
We need to change that to 5 years.
okay, yeah.
What page is that?
That's page 19 of the original one there. But what were you gonna say?
What constitutes substantial?
The planning
Could be-
board
because-
generally determines, go ahead.
I was going to say, because we agreed to the one up on Route 12 by the fairgrounds, we said, okay, substantial constitutes you taking all the old buildings out of there and leveling everything out. And that constitutes, the substantial requirement, which he had a year to do something with. Well, nothing's been done since then, other than I think they drilled for compact, if the
Did
ground.
they do the soil testing out there?
Yeah, that was done a number of months ago before winter set in. But what actually constitutes substantial?
It's up to the board to decide that.
It's a subjective term.
One by one on each property or each plat that we're deciding on. It's up to the board to come up with what is substantial, what isn't. We don't have a set thing because the projects are different.
Right, we don't want to, again, bury ourselves because it's a subjective thing, and
So that's what constitutes it. The board agrees. If somebody says, no, that isn't substantial, the other one says, yes, it is because it's such and such. So we hash it all out and the board as the board decides the motion. Case by case basis.
Okay.
And again, that's a 5-year exemption now. That's 674.49 is where they're talking about that.
you only get that one at 703, chapter 3, right? Section 31, page 7 on the old original one. I know you and I and Sarah talked about it, but that's the one where they changed the law, we no longer can pass the selectmen for an extension.
Yeah, right. We got rid of that. Yeah, I'll do that in a moment, but that's one of the three out Skip to what I have here. It's really small. There's not much. Again, it was the old section 12. If I can find it in here, these numbers are all different now, and all my notes are in this other one here, but let me just read the paragraph to you. It's under describing how the applications are processed. And it says the application shall be submitted to the planning board at the next regular meeting for which notice can be given. And the board shall determine if the submitted application is complete according to these regulations and shall vote on its acceptance. Such meeting must occur within 30 days following delivery of a completed application. Acceptance of the completed application by the board shall occur at regularly scheduled meetings after notification to a voter has been given as required by RSA 67645D. And just after that, we use this everywhere else in our rules of procedure. We spell out as and a public hearing may immediately follow or be scheduled for a date and time certain.
sorry, what RSA did you cite again?
That was RSA, that's 676-4 ID. That's just the notification RSA that tells who has to be notified and all that business there. 676-4, I, and that's D in there. And that's, again, that's just referenced in this paragraph just for notification purposes. So we wouldn't have to write down the whole 9 yards of who's notified and how they're notified and so on and so forth. But I'm just thinking we should add that sentence that we may have a public hearing immediately afterwards. And we also have, again, it's not in order here, but we have board action on a completed application. And we've got in there, the board shall begin consideration of the completed application within 30 days of the date the application is accepted as complete by the board. So we aren't required to do that. There's no statute requiring us to act upon it within 30 days, just to act upon it within 65 days. That's all it is. Now, we can have it anything we want like that in our regulations. We can do that, but again, we might be, painting ourselves in the corner on something there.
Why do we shorten that time frame? Why do we?
We haven't shortened any. I'm just saying that this is in our site plan review regulations that we shall be in consideration, and we can keep it that way too. It doesn't matter. It's just an option. We aren't required to do that by statute. It's an option that the board can do. If we want to put it in our regulations that we will start considering the application within 30 days of accepting it as complete, then we leave it in there and do it. We have to do it anyway.
We have to have the meeting to accept the application or not.
Yeah.
30 days.
That's within 30 days of when the application has been submitted.
Right.
30 days to act on it there, but we don't have to act on it in 30 days after that. We've got 65 days to act on it. We don't have to start in 30 days. We can start 3 meetings in there as a simple thing, something like that.
But we have to be done by 65.
65, you're done by 65, right?
So you have 45 days. Not 45, it's
Depending
only
on
35.
Depending on the meetings fall within the whole.
Again,
I'm just saying, just pointing out it's in there, seeing what the board wants to do. The board wants
things
to.
off too far, though, when you paint yourself in the corner.
I don't really work, You're not really putting it off. I'm just saying if the board wants to keep it in there, we don't have to have it in there. It's never been a problem, I don't think, since I've been on the board.
Less is more.
So you're saying we've never reverted to this item to cause us to
I'm saying
start moving?
No one has ever come in and said, hey, you guys didn't, start considering my application.
Yeah.
It's been well within 30 days, or after 30 days that you accepted it as complete. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Never had that happen.
If the RSA allows 65 days, I don't understand why we shortened it to 30 days.
We didn't shorten it. What we're doing is that we're just telling the applicant that the board is going to act upon your application that we accepted at a meeting. We're going to act upon that within 30 days. We still have 65 days to make a determination, but we're going to act on it within 30 days and get things going. That's what that paragraph said. Okay. And we're just promising to them that we're going to.
Which we'll probably do anyway.
We do anyway.
Yeah, probably.
Just leave it.
Or strike it.
We can
just
strike it out of there.
Strike it out.
Okay,
So we're not held to it.
Yeah, if we're gonna.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So at the end of the 65 days, that has to be done though, right?
Right.
Like we-
Yes.
So if we wait too long, I think is what somebody else started to say, towards that 65-day mark when we have to approve it or reject it, then if we wait until day 60 and we only have that 5-day interval there, then you can't continue it to a next meeting, right?
Not unless the applicant says, yeah, we'll give you an extension. We have to make a decision, yes
So-
or no. And we're supposed to know that.
So then if we had another project like the one at the airport, which was how many meetings did we sit through? And we wait until day 60 to bring that up in front of the board, we're only gonna have that one meeting right then and there to whether approve it or reject it.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
That's what we gotta
should know enough not to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's why I was bringing up that review
For the
before we start
preliminary review.
before we start the clock.
And it is also, it's a good idea to do that. And if there are things, if applicant decides not to do the conceptual or the design review and just comes right in with the application, the planning board, if they don't have the information that they need, they can either deny it without prejudice, so they come back in again, or whatever, but they have to tell them what they need for information, and it's gotta be, something that can be defended.
Is it something that we could get Sarah to suggest when they come in with their application?
I think she does, anyway, or Mike.
For review?
We do kind of go through the motion of that unofficially, and we do recommend it in things that are more complicated. I mean, I believe with Flatley, didn't they come in before they?
They did a
submitted their
conceptual,
application?
yes.
But not all applicants are amenable to that process. When we pass it.
Right, but again, that's one thing if the planning board has all the information, but if we don't, then they can either agree to an extension or we can make a decision.
Would you mind if we just back it up to that last thing? Are we striking the 30-day requirement?
I think we might as well, because we aren't required to do it by statute. We do it anyway, so rather than put something in there that we forget about and we didn't do it, say it was 31 days and we acted upon it, then we got somebody like Adam, or not the name names, but somebody that wanted to cause trouble for us.
If we had a stickler.
A stickler, very good. Yeah. So,
Does everybody understand what Scott's proposing here? So what would happen is you would receive the application and you would accept it as complete. And the rule right now says you have to act on that. You have to take the next step within 30 days. But statutorily, you have a 65-day period to complete your action on any application. So this is just removing that 30-day shelf. You still would have been aware of the application to accept it as complete, which would start the clock. They want, right? So it wouldn't be like it's day 60 and we just found out about it, because you would have had to already have accepted the application.
Okay.
So if you guys were waiting until day 60, you would be being very negligent.
I don't like the idea of, if the statute gives us 65 days, why we would even think about shortening the legal permission.
We're not, though.
You're not.
and we can't shorten
It's
it.
65 altogether, that 30 is just in the middle of the 65, it doesn't. It's the
Thirty
beginning of the
is
65.
Starting to
It's just a
consider,
board rule,
Right.
yeah.
just a board rule, it's not a statute.
Yeah, you've got, supposed to follow the rules still.
Well, that's what
That's why we want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's why we haven't.
Sure.
Can we strike that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Unless you can think of how it got there in the first place, Scott, you probably.
I think it got there by mistake, because of the 30-day, you have to act on the application within 30 days of it being submitted to the land use board. And I think they just said, well, a 30-day act on it, yeah, that sounds right. We'll put that in there. I think that's how it got there, it's been in there for a long time.
There's no penalty if you haven't.
No, there isn't, no, it's just well,
It's a suggestion.
it is.
Is it statutorily stated that once we accept, or if we went to the 30 days, that 30 days is included within that 65-day period? Does it say that specifically?
It says that from the day the board accepts the application, that's when the 65 days go. Yeah, if it's run out to the 30th day that we've got to act on it, since it's been submitted to the board, when we accept it on that 30th day, then it starts the 65 days. But the board can't discuss it unless it's preliminary or conceptual before that. It's just been submitted to the land use office.
Mm-hmm.
Got put on the agenda, notice is sent out, and the board takes a look at it. So we've got 30 days to do that, to accept it as complete or not.
We understand that, you understand that, Sarah understands that, but in the future, somebody might not understand that, so maybe that would be a reason to leave it there.
I don't follow that one at all.
Yeah, that's
No.
not, that's a different 30 days.
Oh, yeah. right,
This is
it's a
the
different
30 days
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, there are two.
for the
30
board
days.
to meet and decide whether or not it's
Confusing.
complete.
Okay, so actually we have 95 days from the time that it's submitted to the land use board.
okay.
We do.
I mean,
yeah.
not, I mean, to the office.
95 or
And
less.
when it's in the office, any board member
You
can
can
go
do
in
it
there and
now.
take a look at all the stuff, you know, the plans and all that type of stuff. We can all do that without discussing it in a meeting and still be familiar with the plan before they even come in for acceptance.
Which I have done on occasion.
Okay,
Well,
is that
yeah,
something
well.
then, not to load up Sarah or Mike or whatever?
Sarah has them all, they're all.
No, but what I'm saying is, if something like that comes in, that we get a notice that, okay, we have this application, please come in and review.
Oh, yeah, email.
Does
Can
that-
we get a larger
Saying we got a
application?
big
You want
one
me
in
to-
there, yeah, saying it was a little complicated.
No,
I have the plan
You
in
know,
here.
I don't, I'm not trying to burden you with anything.
But
Yeah,
when,
well, we don't get the department head review, you know.
but when we're doing it, you know, if there are two planning board members there, you can't really discuss it, say, well, I don't like this, or this isn't right, or that isn't right.
Oh, yes.
It's just.
Jot it
reviewing,
down.
you know, we're gonna go over plans later, just how to review them, just
Mhm.
basic reviewing on them, that's what we should be doing, just get familiar with the plan, and not necessarily discussing it with one another, whether it's 2 people or 5 people or whatever.
I can potentially add you guys onto the department head review email that I send out, but do not respond to it as a department head and review the plan. It would just be the heads up that, and I do that for every application that comes in to planning and ZBA. And
Yeah.
then you know there's a
That
plan in
would
the
work.
office and you can come look at it.
Mhm.
Or you'll have the plan on your computer and you can look at it.
If people wander in when somebody else is there, we just wander away. We come back later. Just make it upstairs.
Yes.
Okay, underneath that one, on line B, but let me just read the paragraph, because there's no huge change here. It says, "The board shall act to approve, conditionally approve, or disapprove the completed application within 65 days, plus 30 days for development of regional impact of submission, except as otherwise provided herein." That submission should be acceptance, because if it's within 65 days of submission, whenever they submit it to the land use office, they think they're starting at 65 days there, but it's not. It has to be accepted and
That's
completed. So you need to change that word submission to acceptance. So if you just, you guys have things, just bring it up there. I'm under public hearings. This is the old 7.05
Mhm.
here. And it's just that, a small thing here. I'll read the paragraph. After the application is accepted as complete and prior to approval or disapproval, a public hearing shall be held in accordance with RSA 676-4ID. That should be 4IA, I mean E, rather, not 4IE. Then it goes on to say, notice of public hearing shall be given to the applicant, abutters, holders of conservation, preservation, or agricultural preservation restrictions. The public and every engineer, architect, land surveyor, or soil scientist with professional seal appears on the plat. That's part of that, that's in there. And then we could just say that is or per 676-4ID, which they had set up there before. That's a notification thing, so we should, we're talking about notifying those people. So 676:4ID, which is a notification for that, which is the end of that sentence.
I don't have that anywhere.
It's not in
In
there.
this-
Page 8,
No, I'm looking at this.
Oh, in there, okay, looking at our 676. The
4,
first one was 4I, or row number 1, ID. That is the notification paragraph.
oh, okay, within
Okay,
time, when the
D.
time period is specified.
Yep, that's the
Okay.
notification part of it.
Yeah.
And the one that we looked at before was 676:4IE. And that says the public hearing has to be held in accordance with that RSA. That just says, the RSA just says that the planning board has to hold a public hearing on a site plan. And that.
Yeah.
I have just another small little wording thing here.
No, just in regard to public hearings, sometimes I don't think that people are here for a public hearing they might like to be here for, because we move right on into a public hearing. And I think we might get more public interaction and vocalization of how they feel about these things if we, on some of the things, we might be able to hold off the public hearing and notice it.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it also gives the board a chance to think about the
Yes.
application and think about things here and there. The only thing, you know, I'm torn the other way is because they took away the 90-day review period and brought it down to 65 days. So that we're cutting ourselves short again, another 2 weeks short again by doing that. You know, it's nice, I think it is best to think about the thing before we actually have the public hearing. We accept the application, we all have it, think about it, and we've got, you know, possibly intelligent questions to ask the applicant when they come in for the public hearing and those things. But again, we've got that time constraint. So it hasn't been a problem. We just have to consider that. But I agree with that. You know, it's a good thing to do sometimes, just to accept it at one meeting, have the public hearing at the next meeting. But some of them are small.
Yeah, they might not come to every meeting, you know, they might not come to that initial meeting, but if they're noticed of a public hearing on that meeting, they've had time to think about it, then we get more public interaction.
When they get the notice, it does mention that we may have a public hearing right afterwards in that notice, so they
Yeah,
they
this
do
is
know about
true,
that.
but it's, we may have,
Yeah.
and they may not
Well, it says
consider
a
it.
public hearing will be held right afterwards, or if not, dates, time, dates, or something like that. So they're pretty much aware that we're having a public hearing on something like that.
Most of them go on, right, that night usually, right?
We do, yeah, it's
Mhm.
basically, yeah, it's some of the smaller things, they should go right on like that.
Yeah.
Nothing that the applicant wait 2 more weeks, you know, waiting around for what the planning board's gonna do. But some of the larger things, yeah, we might have that, think about it time, but again, those longer ones, we will restrict it that 65 days, so we need the time to.
You know, that's, I think that's where our ability to go in before we have that application review.
And we also can continue the public hearing, you know.
But it was still on that clock.
Yeah, but we can still, right, we're still on the clock, you're right, but we still continue the public hearing, you know, and think about it for another 2 weeks, and then come back like that. It makes sense to do that with a lot of the larger projects, because you can't think about everything at the meeting when you're there. You know, when you're home, you think about, oh, well, who asked them that, or why did they say that, or did they really say this or something? But when you close the public hearing and decide on the matter, too late. So, you don't want to, you know, the board member suggests, because again, I forget things at the meeting, I'm trying to run it, trying to concentrate on keeping it flowing there, but I'm just suggesting, well, shall we postpone or rather continue the public hearing in the next meeting? We're already going to, I think, maybe this is not regulation, we talked about not having a public hearing until we've heard from the Conservation Commission, because the meeting's being stepped a little bit. Did we ever put that in there? Was that in these or our rules of procedure? These rules of procedure.
Don't they meet just once a month?
I don't,
We wanted to make sure that we didn't have a public hearing before they got a chance to meet, because after the public hearing, we close it, and it's done.
yeah, I know we discussed it, I remember discussing it, but I don't know if we put it in writing. There's a,
No?
We can always commence the public hearing and reserve decision, which gives us an additional time frame to render a decision, or reserve decision pending receipt of the Conservation Committee's recommendation.
it's still on the
It's gotta be in a
clock,
public
though.
meeting, yeah, it's still on the clock, but it's gotta be in a public meeting. We can just postpone, if we actually open up a public hearing, we can just, not postpone, people saying that, we can continue the public hearing to the next meeting. If the Conservation Commission hasn't done that, but
Then I suppose that if one felt that we should, we could make a motion that we not have the public hearing
That we,
until the
yeah.
next meeting.
I mean, don't hold a public hearing until next meeting, I could do that. But It's still on the clock, like Richard said, regardless of
Yeah, it
whether we
is.
open the public hearing or not. We're still on this.
But we can't be, I don't feel like we should be pushed.
I know, I feel that way so often, so I feel like the pressure, when I know I just need to think more, So we should, like, in practice, we should feel, it sounds like you're encouraging us in practice to feel free to propose that we
Oh, yeah.
continue if we're not ready.
Yeah.
If we just feel too much pressure.
And any other things you bring up at the meeting, like, don't let me carry the meeting. Just join in, don't think that you got a stupid question or a question that you shouldn't ask or whatever, just ask it. That's the way we have the discussion on these meetings, that's the way we get things done. So again, if it looks like I'm carrying the meeting or taking over the meeting, just let in, say something. Just shut up.
We need to talk to you about that.
There's no way that we can stay a decision that would stop the clock and restart it, is there?
There isn't, but
Take the battery out.
The funny thing about that, the planning board has 65 days to do that. If the planning board hasn't acted within the 65 days, the selectmen have another 30 days to convince the planning board to make a decision. And then if that 30 days is up, the selectmen have another 10 days, it can't be 40 days, they have another 10 days to actually approve it. So actually, if the planning board wants to be negligent, they can have another 30 days, because then it goes to the selectmen, writing them a letter saying, hey, you guys got to act on this.
Yeah, purposely negligent.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little catch-22 there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another 30 days. I don't know that we really want to be doing that.
As long as the board understands it's strategic, as long as the selectmen understand it's strategic.
Yeah, but it'll always be approved. It won't.
Well,
You can't
only
deny
if the selectmen do it,
Right,
the
if
selectmen-
you guys don't want to approve
The selectmen have 30 days to convince the planning board to do something, direct their actions and do something. And then if the planning board doesn't, then the selectmen have 10 days, and it has to be approved.
Right.
But then, I think then our situation was, according to the legal advice that we got, we would lose control. Once the selectmen say you've got to approve it, then they could go back.
The selectmen can't tell us to approve it. The selectmen has to tell us to act on it. They can't say which way that we have to act on it. They just have to say that you guys are going to act on it, and in 30 days or in 40 days, we're going to make a decision for you if you don't make a decision.
Right.
But after 60, you can only approve it, I think, right?
I don't think so, is it?
Or
Is it
65?
65? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe so. I've been reading that wrong. Anyway, yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, move on.
Let's do what we've been doing. We've been doing
30
okay.
days
for
left.
65 days, so let's continue on that one. Yeah, okay. Okay, this was the old 706-4, and it reads that the notice of the public hearing was included in the notice of submission, or any prior notice, additional notice of the public hearing is not required. Additional notice is not required of any adjournment session of the hearing, provided that the date, time, and place of the adjourned session was made known at the prior meeting. But it refers to it as hearing, I think, in the RSA, so I'm just suggesting we change that word to hearing.
I think I kind of want to speak to that, considering the situation we even had this evening. We had a public hearing posted, but we didn't have a public hearing, we did not open a public hearing, we did not accept an application as complete, but we announced the change of the date for that public hearing at the meeting.
But we
So I just
announced,
want to question it.
we announced the date of the application, but we didn't accept an application or anything to do a public hearing, or we weren't accepting it. What are you saying?
We didn't
open a public
Let's
hearing.
look at the agenda.
So, yeah, let's take a look at the agenda. What I'm saying is, you're suggesting if we're going to, oh, so that section is only applying for public hearing? Okay, never mind,
Yep.
sorry. I take that back.
Okay. Yeah, only public hearing, and I'm. One. say, I was circled it in here, so I remember what the place was, but the addition, proper notice, the date, time, and place of the adjourned session was made known at the prior hearing. So we'll use that word. All right. I've got notes on landscape. We need to look at that landscaping because it causes some trouble.
Especially fair trees.
I'm just looking to see if I have any other notations on that, because we need to look at that. We did this 4-year extension, let's see. Do that comment. Yeah, we have under telecommunications facilities there, section 9, I'm not sure what it is in our original ones, but again, it's a minor thing, I'll just read you the paragraph. It's talking about the setback of towers, and it reads, towers must be set back a distance equal to 125% of the height of the tower from any off-site residential structure. So we're limiting it.
That's Steve's formula right there, right?
It is, that's right, but we're limiting that to that amount, to that distance there. So I think we ought to just have it read like this: towers must be set back a minimum distance of at least 125% of the height of the tower from any on-site residential structure. That means that they can be set back further. This is saying that it has to be at 125%. We're just saying.
Or more, you want to, we feel it needs to be pushed back even further.
Yeah, that it's a minimum. We're setting a minimum standard there
Okay.
of at least 125% of the height of the tower.
That makes sense. Right.
We don't limit ourselves that much. And we did that. Just wanted to check, we got the special flood hazard areas there. That was the old 13. And I just was wondering, Sarah, if you know, it's in number 2, and we refer to the flood insurance rate maps and flood boundary and floodway maps of the town of Swanzey dated May 5th, 1981.
Should I make sure that matches? what we
Yeah.
just updated?
Yeah, just want to make sure that. And we have that new tenant application, in there. Remember, we did that a couple of weeks ago there.
Yeah.
And it was going to read like this. We had A, B, and C. I think it was you. Yeah. So I think we decided to go with C, which says new tenant applications. Businesses moving into a multi-use building that has received previous site plan approval and previous multi-tenant approval for the same type of permitted use may be allowed with planning board approval without further formal site plan review or public hearing before the planning board. The public hearing is deemed necessary in such a case. Notice will be given pursuant to RSA 6764I. Same one. That, I think, that covers that new tenant application, one we had in the old. We're going to replace that, right? With that C, everyone agree with that? Okay. That's understood.
Under that, same thing under home base, the number 1, where it says application submitted, can we insert applications that have been submitted? Making that more.
Yeah. You're right. Application submitted to the Board of Selectmen for qualification of use as home-based business.
Yeah, so after applications, just insert that have been.
That have been.
I think what it's intended to say is applications first are submitted to the Board of Selectmen, and then after the selectmen qualify, then the next things happen. It's a bad sentence.
Okay,
Yeah.
make it make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Victoria's right. I think that's what that the intent of that.
So let's be first, then us.
That's what?
So let's be first.
Okay, Sarah, gonna come up with some different wording on that. Okay.
Is that a D again, or a E as far as the notice? RSA 676:4I.
That would be the D, because the E just talks about the requirement of having to have a public hearing. The D is about noticing.
I'm sorry, but under 676.4, I don't have an I.
Well, 676 for Roman numeral 1.
Yeah, numeral one. Sorry about that. I've been saying I the whole time. It's right underneath that one,
Roman numeral.
right on page 477. That's effective January 1st, 2023. There's another one further back that was.
Yeah, but revocation
Effective
and
until
quarter.
2023, but on 477, page 477.
Let me, if I may, just give me a second more to get my fingers working here. Oh, I understand my mistake now, because I was looking after the 674 on 482. It says 676.4-A, and that's what.
Yeah, that's a little bit.
Yes, that's why I was a little confused of what. Sorry about that.
Now, under the appeals, we had, should we add a little something to that, because there's the new, with the housing appeal board, the new board that's set up, the housing appeal board?
Yes.
We might have to make reference to that when it has to do with housing, because we read now appeals. Any person agrees by decision of the planning board may appeal said decision to the Superior Court pursuant to RSA 67715. Such any disapproval by the board is based on non-compliance.
Yeah, we'd have to put the housing, or because it's their choice.
So we have to put it unless, because it's not for everything, it's not for the businesses, it's only for the housing.
Right, it's only for housing.
Is it for all?
Oh,
I think it is too,
For
so
housing.
there's a name in the housing there. So you might have to put it, or a separate sentence that says, an appeal may be made under that new housing
Appeal for, yeah.
board,
It's a housing appeal.
if it has to do with housing. Give some wording for that.
Or the Supreme Court as applicable.
Yeah, but
Oh, they can't go through the board before they go to Supreme Court. You can't go right to the Supreme Court.
Well,
Yeah,
you're saying it's
no.
applicable, whether it's a business or multi-family.
On the appeal, it's a housing, it goes to the housing board. If it's a if it's a commercial, then it goes to the Superior Court after an appeal.
No, yeah,
How
right.
does that work?
Commercial goes to Superior Court.
Yeah,
If it's a commercial one, before they had the housing appeals, you would go to the zoning board of adjustment. If your gripe was that the planning board didn't follow the zoning of that town, then you go to your ZBA.
Yeah, that's,
Now it is that if it's under the housing part of it,
Yeah,
you can go to the housing appeals board to appeal a decision by the planning board. But if it's not, if it's industrial, then you go to Superior Court.
yeah, it's
So in Roxbury-
679 in this.
In Roxbury, didn't they just, it seemed like the developer, the applicant
517, page 517.
went to the Housing Appeals Board, and then that, together as a party, they appealed to the Superior Court.
You
Is
can
that what
appeal it.
happened?
Yeah, you can appeal their decision. If you don't like the housing.
But no, so I think the Housing Appeal Board was supporting the applicant, was, you know, representing the applicant
Yeah.
at the Superior Court.
I don't think they were representing them, but the town, I mean, the town did not like the Housing Appeals Board decision because they upheld the subdivision of whoever was the applicant there.
Yeah.
So then the town said, well, we're gonna go to Superior Court because we think we're right. So I don't think the appeals board represented them. I don't think they can do that. I think they had their own attorney.
Okay.
Which we did the same thing in North Swanzey. Yeah, that was on the ZBA, but not on the planning board, but the ZBA.
618, 617.
Was that the page number?
Yes. And 679 is the citation. I'm sorry, 517. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going off the answer. Okay.
Yeah, there aren't that many pages in the
Anyway, I'm
book.
running out of pages here. Where was
Oh,
it?
yeah,
Was this
the
at-
board
it was
is
a housing
at the
appeals
bottom.
board?
Yes, Housing Appeals Board, when it was
At the
established.
bottom.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was looking for that.
It was attached to the HB2 bill that year.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah,
rejected
2020.
3 times by the legislature.
That explains their purpose there. So,
On page
Learning and
517.
experience,
Chapter 679.
question, land use, and-
On 17, bottom right. Starting here, we can go to the next.
So, we also have, this is back in November, we had correspondence, actually it was to the Conservation Commission from Jay Ward, regarding the groundwater protection thoughts, they say, that we added some groundwater protection stuff, some wellhead protection stuff in the ordinance here. And they had some suggestions on it, and one of them was that, their paragraph is this: on any property where land disturbing activities are to take place, all inactive wells not in use or properly maintained at the time the site work plan is submitted shall be considered abandoned, must be sealed by the well owner in accordance with the most current version of the New Hampshire Water Well Board rules. Noted now is WE 604. So they suggested putting that in there, which is probably a good suggestion, just in case, you never know, there's an old well there.
Mhm.
Well,
Very
that-
wells and/or cistern,
I don't
just
know.
in case somebody has them.
Well, why not? 'Cause there's
That
a big
means that it's
cistern
not a
right up
well,
there.
it's a
Yeah,
cistern,
there's
right?
a big one up there, so yeah.
Yeah.
Cisterns in there too.
When Conservation Commission just a few years ago were walking on, over by the Kenny Farm, Crescent, not Crescent, in the woods, there was an old well there, and there were boards that had been laid on top of it, but they were much deteriorated. And Steve Stepanek did go back on his own time and put boards on there that fit, and so they could be seen. But I suppose it's still there.
Probably is,
Yeah.
So,
So that's not properly sealed, even though it's better than it's there.
What?
It's still probably not properly sealed.
I don't know if it is or if it went with what the town owns now. That we'd have to check.
So this just covers site plan review regulations for anything other than residential use. If it's on residential property, then. Can't do it.
Where would it fit, Scott? Where would you put it in?
That would be,
Did we make a motion?
I think we did, we had, in mine it was, but this is about, they've had it under general standards. Yeah, under general standards is where they had it. So that would be- It could be.
The
General standards is
or
on
general provisions.
page 12, I thought.
That's landscape standards. This is general.
Oh,
general
whoops, there we
standards.
go, the actual general standards.
Oh, right there.
What was it, page what?
9.
Oh, went right by it. There we go.
Maybe they did put it in
Oh,
specific.
maybe they did. They said general standards, but maybe it is specific. They had it right after the water supply and sewage facility system, and we have something in here about that, sure. Yeah, and they did have it on there. I've got a number 6, it's not number 6 on yours, but they had it right after the water supply and sewage disposal systems.
You can stop for
It would go there.
So-
We can just renumber those, I suppose, because we have 12 things in that category. We have water supply and sewage disposal systems, we have underground fuel storage tanks, stormwater drainage, pollution control, handicap persons, utilities, transmission lines, or physical plans.
Did you want it to become the new number 7?
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, that is fit there, because then the next one is underground fuel storage tank. And so, yeah, that would be good. That would go for that, in that paragraph that they had, and adding cisterns in there. You have a copy of that? Or something?
I should have a copy of that. But if I don't, I'll call you.
Okay. And they also had another provision in there. And this was under stormwater drainage. They had, for any use that will render impervious more than 15% or more than 2,500 square feet of any lot, whichever is greater, stormwater management plan shall be prepared, which will find where the term is consistent with the current provision of the New Hampshire Stormwater Manual lines 1 through. Generally, do have, I don't know, that's a small area, that's only like 50 feet by 50 feet, so that'd be every single development, and have probably a 50 by 50 foot building on it, and that's impervious, because the roof is impervious. So that sounds a little restrictive to me, although we do have, normally, they have to present a stormwater drainage plan on all the site plans. Part of it is actually required in stormwater drainage. It talks about increase in the peak flow of surface runoff. You can't go onto another property. So you have to have a plan for that. What does anybody think? I know you don't have a copy of this, I just have a copy of it because it's from one of our meetings.
Well, the 4 condo units there on Whitcomb Road, he referenced that we have a detention swale area there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Driveway.
They all kind of have to, because part of the site plan review regulations is that no stormwater can leave the property, and that's it, so. Regardless, it's pretty much covered, whether that impervious there or not, although they do building coverage impervious. So I think we have it covered with that. Anybody else think about that? I think we do too. They also suggested, as a number 3, there should be a designated area for snow accumulation and or snow dumps from outside sources. We do have a designated areas for snow accumulation, but we don't allow outside sources to dump snow that I know of anyways in town. It have to be a use. You don't have that as a use site plan, so you need to have that in there. But again, these are suggestions that they gave to us here.
We don't have any way of measuring that, though, I mean, people say, oh, we'll just put the snow over there. We don't, the storm that we just got.
Yeah.
I know when we were talking about the development on Wilson Pond, that Mike Desmond said, oh, we'll just truck it out, but we don't have any way to quantify whether the snow storage space is adequate.
Other than it taking up their parking spaces, no,
Yeah.
that's all. And again, it's difficult to do, because you don't have storms like we had the other day.
What do you do when you get a light snow versus a heavy snow? Wet snow versus dry snow?
Very similar, very similar.
Yeah.
And it has to be taking up their parking spaces. But it can be added as a condition of a site plan, but it has to be enforced all the time. After every big snow, Mike doesn't have to go to the place and say, well, okay, you guys get
I don't think we'll win points.
There's no town location where anyone in town could dump their snow from the parking area, is there?
I don't think, not that I know of anyway. Not even at the dump, I don't think.
Yeah.
Down there.
Because I know like in Keene, they're allowed to do it where the old dump used to be.
Yeah, and the fairgrounds will sometimes get snow trucked in
Mm-hmm.
for the purpose of doing the winter carnival or
Oh,
something,
Mm-hmm.
or snow cross or whatever they call it, when they build the big ramps. But that's not a waste at that point, that's a commodity.
yeah, that's right, yeah. And, see, we had also under the aquifer protection part of it and wellhead protection area there. We've covered, they go through it as far as, see, they have outdoor storage areas for regulated substances associated with material or waste. We've got that covered on E, F, and G, on page 9. I was not going to read them there or not. Well, probably should have to do that. No, they don't have that. So we'll hold off on that. I can read some of these there, but we can hold off on that. In there, but I went through them. And it's the same. I think they pretty much just copied what we had there. Oh yeah, they added in this. We don't have anything about it in our regs, so we might want to add this in. And it reads, an approved plan for blasting activities. All activities related to blasting shall be performed in accordance with current New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services blasting best management practices to prevent contamination of groundwater. These include preparing, reviewing, and following an approved blasting plan prior on a proper drilling, disposal, handling, and loading procedures, observing the entire blasting procedures, evaluating blasting components, and handling and storage of blasted rock. So we might want to put that in there because blasting may affect an aquifer. You know, not too much bedrock around here, but you might.
Even just some of the big erratics, you know, are too big to move.
Yeah.
I mean, it won't be like exciting blasting.
So we might want to consider putting that in there.
Especially as we get more built out, you know, there's going to be less easy land to put
Yeah,
on.
more blasting.
Would, on the application, would Mike not see that and bring that to their attention to follow, if they have to follow the state and federal?
Yeah, they do anyway, right, they do anyways, but, you know, it probably wouldn't hurt to have it in the regs. It's being there, you know. I don't know, up to the board.
That's the one that won't hurt my health.
Let's see, anything else, the proposed animal storage for manures and fertilizers, we've got that in there. Spill control and countermeasure plan, we have that in there. That was it for what the Conservation Commission, Jay Ward. Let's see, we also had, this is from Jay Ward on February 3rd. And he just had some thoughts on the harmony and compatibility of the project compared to the existing site and neighborhood. See, he just lists that the planning board determination of whether the proposed site plan and building architecture is acceptable shall depend on but not be limited to the following appearance factors. Talks about building materials and the opinion of the planning board should be suitable for the durability and appearance of the project. We've got that covered under section 8.12B, but that's in the new one. Don't stick it in yours, it's on that one. But I went through them to see if we had them. Building size and the opinion plan board, but not necessarily identical to the size of the other buildings in the neighborhood. We can't, that's covered under density. Can't really talk about that really other than zoning density, building sizes. The colors of the building, the planning board must be in accord with the colors of the buildings in the neighborhood. Again, we've got that covered under 8.12B. Okay, we've got the shape of the building, including roof lines, and the planning board must be in accordance with other buildings in the neighborhood. We probably can't do too much on the shape of the building. We can't be dictating that, but we have dictated the roofs like we did down here and over there. So we could put that in there. I don't think we have roof lines in there. We could specifically put roof lines in there. Anybody?
Where are you at architectural plans? Is that what you're comparing? I mean, where would this go?
Where would it go? It would go under the harmony and compatibility, they've got it. But it would
It's a
go-
whole new
It
section.
would go under section 8, and let me just see here. Again, I'm going by a different one. We'll all have this one for the next meeting, right? So, I probably shouldn't even mark
Our
this
section is general standards, design and development standards.
I think we should have the roofing in there so that the last two they just gave in to us.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to actually do that.
No, but it's their benefit that they did.
Yes.
Because we have this on page 16 of the version that I think most of us have, it's architectural plans. It says the evaluation of the following appearance factors will govern the planning board's decisions on whether the proposed building signs are acceptable. And it talks about harmony and compatibility.
Yeah.
Lighting design, building materials and color considerations. We talk about woodwork, but we could add, maybe we could add some of that stuff to this section.
Probably the section it should go. That section was a new section here.
Probably two building elevations.
What's that?
Probably two there,
Okay, yeah.
building elevations there.
Well, that just says that the plan shall indicate
Yeah.
building, but doesn't say that we have any authority to evaluate that.
So we're talking about the roof lines being added in there someplace, right?
Can we do building material, like number 1, under evaluation of the following appearance factors? Building materials, features, and color considerations. Because features, I know they do some windows and some of the
Yeah,
halls over there.
and that's within our jurisdiction to outside appearance, windows and doors and things like that, style of those. So, yeah, roof, maybe just roof lines somewhere in there, in that first one, the one that it covers line. Yeah. Let's see, they also have that. Lighting design, they have lighting, we have lighting in there. That's on the lighting design on the exterior of the building. We have that in there. It's got a number 6 on here that reads, the retention, alteration, or removal of existing structures and site features should, in the opinion of the planning board, leave the appearance of the site in accord with the surrounding neighborhood. I don't know whether that's a control there, you know. They retain the building that's on the property, it's on the property, it's already there. Alteration, that's one thing, but that's gonna be covered in the site plan anyway. Removal of the existing structure, talking about the appearance of the site in accord with the surrounding neighborhood. I'll read it again, but I don't know that we can make too much sense of that. The retention, alteration, or removal of existing structures and site features should, in the opinion of the planning board, leave the appearance of the site in accord with the surrounding neighborhood.
Where are you reading from?
No, I'm reading from a page, we've got this back at one of our February meetings, I just kept it in here, because I knew we were gonna be going over sometime, and this was some suggestions, they were from Jay Ward. And there, it was after we had some of those big meetings there on the apartment buildings there, so these were just suggestions. They knew that we were gonna be going over our site plan review, so kept them so we could bring them up at the meeting, but that one, I don't think makes too much sense, I think.
Well, it's already in under, on page 16 of the old one, the evaluation of the following appearance factors, and then number 4 is retention, alteration, or removal of existing structures and site features.
Okay.
Period. So we just added in
All right.
what I think is already covered by the
There then.
top part,
All
which
right.
is what we are evaluating.
And that was the last one. I had those 2 suggestions from, so, like I say, we've got to discuss the, maybe not tonight, but we've got to discuss the landscaping part of it there, and come up with some kind of, I don't know, tune-up to what I think we need to do. And we go into a lot of it with suggesting the types of trees and ground cover. I don't know if we should be in that business of telling them which ones to grow, because they don't grow. And they won't, the planning board suggested they do that. So, let's have something. Plus, it probably should just refer back to the soil survey. You know, we get the plats in here, and the plats always have the soil surveys on, what kind of soil is there. And the Cheshire County Soil Survey, if you look it up there, they tell you what kind of trees and shrubs are indigenous to that, as well as what type they should be planted and what will grow well and what will not grow well in those soils. So maybe we ought to just say that they should refer back to the soil survey as to what to use for their trees or shrubs. Probably mainly trees. Shrubs probably not a problem. I mean, bringing soil for shrubs and stuff, but trees are a problem.
Yeah, if we tell them to go ahead and plant hemlocks and they die in 10 years, then are we liable for the 10, those trees that die?
They could say we're liable for anything. Yeah, you're right, yeah.
The plan for the landscape business said they were going to plant certain kind of pear, and I looked it up, and it is considered invasive by many now because it's been used so much in the United States. It's a Chinese origin, but it's been used a lot because it is a tree that grows fast and blooms beautifully, but it's been used so much that now it's...
Was it the Calvary pear?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's noted as one of ours in here, so maybe we ought to just forget about giving them suggestions and let them figure out and us approve what they come up with. Or
Yeah, and you can look them up very easily
Yeah.
on Google or any search engine.
Well, like in the past, we talked to the abutters, and they suggested certain types of things that they'd like to see, and if we can make an agreement between the abutter and the developer, that's the best of both worlds.
The other thing, the other kind that I noticed that they had was a spruce, and fine, but when I looked that spruce up, there were other spruces on the list that looked better than that, that grew faster than that, and were described as being thicker than that, but I don't want to tell them what to plant. But I would draw their attention to the fact that they have an invasive on the list, and it's kind of strange because they are a landscaping company.
One thing they might have taken it off of our application.
Yeah, they probably did. So another reason I think to get rid of that part of it is it says on the recommended general approach to landscaping, use plants that are suitable for roadside and parking lot conditions for detailed list. Later go to New Hampshire Resources there. So maybe we got to just have in there use plants that are suitable for roadside and suitable to the soils that are found on the site in accordance with the soils survey.
They get rid of recommending any type of species.
Yeah, and yeah.
They have that.
Or just reference the New Hampshire list, period.
They have a winter flame dogwood on there too. Oh my gosh. We planted one of those by mistake, and that thing's ugly. It doesn't do anything for anything. Huh?
Need to borrow a chainsaw?
No, it isn't even that big. I could cut it down, but.
So let's just have something there that says that the trees selected should be suitable to the soils that are on the farm.
Yeah, I like that.
And for the purpose they're planted.
Well, that too, the planning board will tell them if the purpose.
Yeah, okay.
Plant a little midget tree about that big. They're gonna apply too well with that. And probably get rid of that long list of trees. The parking part of it, we need to go over some of that at some point there. We got the 10%. It was a 10% for green or open space in the interior of the parking lot is what we were having a problem with one of the site plans there. And
That's a rabbit hole. Do you want to go down that tonight?
well, yeah, we probably, yeah, I don't know how late it's getting here.
I think Sarah would prefer we did.
Yeah, it's getting complicated.
I certainly
So
would
we
too.
probably won't, but just something to think about there. take a look at some of the existing
Yeah.
parking lots, and I've looked at some of them, and a lot of them, that isn't 10% in there. It looks, it will take market basket. I've got the market basket plan, we'll go over them in another
Oh,
point.
my goodness.
But those that parking lot up there, just from a rough calculation, it looks like about 7% of the interior of the parking lot is green space, and it looks fine, it's a nice parking lot, they did a pretty good job of it. But again, we ought to probably think about that, nail that down, and think about what we're gonna include, because remember, we had that discussion, and you weren't on board, but you were part of that discussion, as to what should be included.
I have to pull my notes, definitely when I can't take minutes.
Okay. I will not say anything. Yes, the noise there. So yeah, I brought a set of plans that I've got from, with Market Basket, they're pretty old there. I had them just to locate some sewer lines and stuff up there, for when they're digging hole. But it's a good set of plans just to look at and get familiar with, you know, we could look, more we dig brings us, look over them tonight and continue this discussion.
Boy, we haggled over those.
Oh, yeah,
for a long
they were a good set of
time.
plans, but we did hang over quite a while.
I wasn't on the board, but I was in all the meetings, I was like,
But just to generally go over them a bit. So that's right, all right, we're right, all right. So maybe we'll quit right there as far as site plan regs. There's a bunch of stuff to add, and if you could copy up that set there, and we'll all be going on the same one next time and see what it looks like.
Would you like me to make the additions in italicized font so that they're easier to see, or just take them right in?
I would say just type them in and what's the rest of the whole thing. You want to see what's been changed, we can compare it to the old one if we want to see what's been changed, but I don't know. I'd say just type them right in. There's a lot to, especially with
Yeah,
rearranging.
right.
With the whole, yeah.
Yeah, that and renumbering stuff, so it's just, we can compare and read the old one. So it's up to the board. Does anybody want to take a look at any of the plans, or shall we postpone that to next meeting?
I'd move we adjourn.
A
I'm
motion?
excited to look at the plans, but I'm tired.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Right. Great idea.
just mention a couple of things and then we can adjourn. There was two things I've been thinking about that we may think about in the future, what we want to do with, and the coming rage, I guess they call it, EV charging stations.
The what? Oh.
EV, electric vehicle charging stations.
Yeah.
How do we want to write some kind of ordinance or plan, site plan regulations on those? If they go into a commercial building, like say Gamalos or another place? And the other thing was little houses.
Little houses?
Little
Yeah, the
houses.
little, yeah, I know what you mean.
Right,
We have our
They're in the
minimum
paper
square
all the
foot
time.
right,
in the zoning already.
Right.
Minimum square foot.
right. It is a lot of other things, but I just throw it out there because I know there's a lot of talk about the little houses.
Come up with some.
Are they RVs or are they really houses? or
No,
what
they're
are they?
really houses, and some of them are really ugly,
Your
that I've
assignment
seen
is
in
to
the
come up with
magazine.
talking points for those at our next meeting.
Can't believe that.
Okay.
We have a motion on the
Second.
table.
Jane made a motion.
I'll second.
To adjourn.
Thank you,
Seconded.
Scott.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great.
Recording stopped.
it's fun to be here next month.